In fact, Allah created all these emotions for a purpose. Even anger has a purpose. You know, even people, I'll tell you something interesting. They found that there is a link between autoimmune disease and suppressing healthy anger. The problem is when we don't manage the emotions and the emotions manage us, right?
I don't know.
Take over.
Just reflecting on like the advice we get from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding the management of emotions. Like, you know, we have the sunnah of what to do when you get angry.
Exactly.
We have the sunnah of how to react in a moment of grief. Like, each of these emotions, we have an example of how to respond in a way that is good for us, and also accepting that emotion and also showing gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Where the Prophet ﷺ was in so much grief at the loss of his child. But he says the eyes shed tears and the heart feels grief.
So what would you say is true happiness, like from an Islamic perspective?
Good question. I think true happiness is qana'a, essentially, which is contentment. In the Quran, we have this concept, rida. So basically, it doesn't mean that you're always going to be thrilled. It doesn't mean that you're never going to experience pain. It doesn't mean that you're never going to experience sadness. In fact, Allah created all these emotions for a purpose. Even anger has a purpose. You know, even people, I'll tell you something interesting. They found that there is a link between autoimmune disease and suppressing healthy anger.
Interesting. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Deep, right?
Yeah.
Because even anger serves a purpose. Allah created everything with a purpose. When we suppress it rather than listening to the message that it's giving us, we get sick.
Yeah.
We actually get sick. And so in this case, even anger is an alarm. It's telling you there's an injustice. There's something that you need to work on. There's something you need to address. But if we just suppress it, again, take out the batteries, right? But the house is still on fire.
Yeah.
And so when we just suppress healthy anger, if you're being oppressed, anger is quite naturally, quite healthy, actually. If you see oppression, should we not be angry about what's happening in Gaza?
Yeah.
You know, but if I'm just suppressing that anger, I'm looking for a way to distract myself. Then I'm not actually doing what is intended. You know, the anger is there to motivate me to make a change. But instead of making the change, I suppress. So in this case, the alarm is saying, you know, address the fire or get out of the house. Okay? But if instead I'm just taking out the battery, so I'm suppressing the anger. The anger was put in me to protect me. It serves a purpose. The problem is when we don't manage the emotions and the emotions manage us, right?
I don't know.
Take over. So again, every emotion, it actually serves a purpose. And when you respond to the emotion in the right way, then it's very healthy. Okay? And as long as you don't allow the emotion to take over, right? You don't allow the anger to take over. You don't allow the sadness to take over. You don't allow even joy. I mean, everything has to have, you have to have control and you have to be able to manage all your emotions. And that's actually part of emotional intelligence. That is what emotional intelligence is. It's the ability to manage your emotions, not to suppress and not to allow them to go wild, right? The example I give, the analogy I give in the book is like when you're driving, you have the accelerator and you have the brakes, okay? The accelerator is the emotion. It motivates you. Emotions are motivators. When you feel anger, it's supposed to be a motivator to do something, to stop the fire or the injustice, right? Now, the brakes are the aql, which literally means something that ties, like aqilha wa tawakkal means tie it and put your trust in Allah. So the aql is actually intended to be the thing that manages the emotion or manages the whim or whatever the emotional side is. But can you imagine a person who only always presses the brakes?
They go
Meaning
nowhere.
Suppression of all emotion. Just feel nothing. Well, you don't go anywhere.
You don't.
The car does not move. So there's no actual forward motion. That's not healthy. So this suppression of everything, of all emotion, is like a car that only uses the brakes. It doesn't move anywhere. Similarly, imagine you have an accelerator with no brakes. What's gonna happen? You just have a bunch of emotions.
Yeah, that's just out of control.
And no aql,
Yeah.
and no brakes, and no management of the emotion. Well, you're gonna crash.
Yeah.
You just got forward motion with no actual management of it. So that's also unhealthy. Both are unhealthy. Brakes with no accelerator, meaning suppression of all emotion without actually allowing the emotion to do what it's meant to do,
Yep.
which is to motivate for good but manage it with the brakes. Or you just have emotion with, no management. So that's also unhealthy.
I'm just reflecting on like the advice we get from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding the management of emotions. Like, we have the sunnah of what to do when you get angry.
Exactly.
We have the sunnah of how to react in a moment of grief. Like each of these emotions, we have an example of how to respond in a way that is good for us, and also accepting that emotion and also showing gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, not suppressing it, but just allowing it to process in its natural way.
Exactly. And that's where I go back to that beautiful statement where the Prophet ﷺ was in so much grief at the loss of his child. But he says the eyes shed tears and the heart feels grief. So he is not suppressing, he's not, just putting it, there's not just breaks, but he's expressing within, and then the last part, and the tongue does not utter except what is pleasing to Allah. That's the management of it, right? So it's that beautiful combination of accelerator and brakes. We have the emotion put in us by Allah for a reason, but He also gave us the capacity to have aql, which is that which ties, manages, controls the emotion. And that's what makes us different than animals. Animals don't have aql. They just have the emotion, they feel a desire, they obey it. And this also comes back to why the culture of just follow and worship your hawa is so dangerous. This is also this is the extreme that we're dealing with today. I feel like it's like extremes reacting to extremes, right? We have on the one hand a culture that we live in by and large, Western culture in general, which tells you just worship your hawa, worship your desires, worship your inclinations and affiliations and inclinations and identifications, right? That's your ilah, your hawa. And there's no breaks. It's like, if today you feel this way, then that's what. Today you think you're a cat, you're a cat. I identify as whatever, and that becomes reality.
That's the reality.
Well, that's very dangerous. That's very dangerous because we can't just let the accelerator go without any management. We have to have something managing it, So that's also obviously very, very dangerous. But again, the other side, the other extreme is also very unhealthy.
And